You ever watch a movie and after watching it, you're like, man, why did I watch that movie? That was a waste of my time. Then you ever think about what your opinion might be if you watched it again? Hey, what is up, you guys? It's Nick at the Lost River Drive-In, and I'm coming at you this evening to talk to you about 10 horror movies that deserve a second viewing. Now, some of these movies, maybe you haven't even seen one time, and that kind of falls under the same umbrella because maybe it's just underappreciated movies. Movies that you never knew existed. Movies that you didn't hear anybody talk about. Movies that you heard people talk about and they didn't say good things about it. These are 10 horror movies that I want you to revisit, or I want you to visit, or I want you to purchase, or I want you to give me your thoughts on them, why you didn't like them, or why you maybe have come to like them. First and foremost, guys, go ahead and head over to Christian Hanna Horror's channel now. Episode 2 of the Uneeda Horror Podcast dropped earlier today. The title of the video is Top 10 Favorite Horror Movies. Christian and I talk about our 10 favorite horror movies. It was a super fun conversation. We've got some really cool things in the works for the next few weeks on the podcast as well. So go ahead, head over to Christian Hanna Horror right now. Check out episode 2. Make sure you're following us on social. Patreon right here. Instagram right here. Twitter right here. Spread the word. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and let's get right into this list. So the first movie I want to talk about, and this might surprise some of my subs here because not long ago I didn't have a very good opinion on this movie. After talking to Christian, my buddy Ken, a couple people that were really into this movie, Justin, and I was like, okay, I'll give it another chance. I'm glad I did. And that first movie is A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, The Dream Master. The thing about this movie the first time I watched it was for whatever reason, I felt like I remembered it being boring and cheesy and corny and just totally uninteresting. Upon rewatch, I realized that part of the cheesy and corniness is the charm to the movie. The movie isn't trying to take itself super seriously, and this was really when you started to get that super hokey Freddy. Obviously, you saw hints of it in Dream Warriors, but really in this movie, it was when it kind of went full throttle into that. I felt like they walked the tightrope well enough, as opposed to some of the later sequels, to where it was enjoyable. You know, it didn't seem like it was an annoyance. I also thought that it was really cool. I guess you could say we had Nancy, who was a worthy adversary, but Kristen also is as well, and that is because of, obviously, the dream powers. And I love the inclusion of that, from part 3 and continuing on with that. The only problem I had is that a lot of the Dream Warriors surviving characters are killed like super quick. Having said all that, I really enjoyed part 4. I thought that for all of its faults, I feel like it's just kind of beautiful in that way. And I think, like I said, that it walked that line super well, as opposed to Dream Child and Freddy's Dead, who I don't think did very well doing that. Part 4 has some really good enjoyment to it. Again, snapper case. Yeah. The Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, The Dream Master. The next movie I want you to revisit, part of this is because this was right when COVID was like starting to spread across the world. It was in January. Not a lot of people really knew about the movie. I guess you could call it sci-fi. Sci-fi horror is what I'd consider it. And that movie is Underwater. I'll be honest, I did not see this movie in theaters. I was interested in it when it came out. I didn't see it. And when I bought it, they didn't have the Blu-ray. I went to Target, Walmart, and I can't remember what the other store was, but I went to 3 stores that didn't have the Blu-ray, so I just settled on the DVD just so I could watch it. And I really dig this movie. First of all, I'm not somebody that dislikes Kristen Stewart. I think she's a fine actress, and I think that she did a good job in this movie. I think that some of the visuals are super cool in this movie. There's some gnarly deaths in this movie. Just really cool. And I really, really enjoyed the end. What you come to find out is actually happening. I don't know, it's kind of a sci-fi nerd at heart. I thought the inclusion of that was really cool. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. Part of it is that it went under the radar. It wasn't talked about a lot. It came out in January. COVID had just started. Nobody really went and saw it. If you saw it and you didn't like it, check it out again. If you didn't see it because of all those factors, check it out. Underwater is fantastic. I love this movie. The third movie I want to talk to you guys about is one that I don't see talked about a lot. And I actually mentioned this on a stream earlier this week with my buddy Justin, and that movie is Eli Roth's The Green Inferno. This movie, I think, is super chilling in the sense of just how disturbing and over the top it can be. And knowing that this is not unrealistic, because there are tribes and groups of individuals across the world that live totally different kinds of lives and have totally different customs. These kids end up walking right into one of them and they get butchered, eaten, sacrificed, whatever you want to call it. And the visuals in this movie are just haunting. I mean, I remember watching this movie, and I'm not squeamish at all. And the one scene with the guy, you know what I'm talking about, when they're ripping everything out. I mean, my Lord, that scene stuck with me. So The Green Inferno, I feel like, is a movie that flew under the radar. But on top of that, I also feel like it's a movie that a lot of people that did end up seeing it were like, oh, that was just, gore fest, blah, blah, blah. I really enjoy The Green Inferno. It is not for the faint of heart, but if you haven't seen it, check it out. And if you did see it and didn't care for it, give it another watch, because I really dig this movie. And then another one that I talked about in our stream earlier this week is one that flew under the radar for many different reasons. And I've also seen chatter about it, people that have seen it thinking it's nothing special. I've seen a lot of people like, it's okay. And that movie is P2 with Rachel Nichols and Wes Bentley. My God, what a great movie. This is a go-to Christmas horror movie for me. I watch it every December, and I love this movie. Starting with Wes Bentley's acting, he is so believable as like a crazed psychopath that will do anything to be with this woman. Rachel Nichols really doesn't morph. She always is a badass in this movie. She's a very, very smart survivor. She's a fighter, and I really dig a lot of the stuff she does. And she fights back, man, and I love that. The atmosphere of this movie, the claustrophobic setting, just feeling like there's no hope the whole time for her. It's just awesome. It is like I said, a yearly Christmas watch. I just found out there's not even an American Blu-ray for it, so that sucks. I mean, that goes to show you how underappreciated it is. But guys, if you haven't seen this movie, I need you to check out P2. And if you have seen it and you didn't care for it, well, you better rewatch it, because I'm telling you, this movie is a sneaky good Christmas slasher thriller, and I love this movie. Now, another one that I think people are starting to come around on, thankfully now, including myself. I came around to it a few years ago, but it took me a while. But there's still a lot of people that trash this movie. That's House of Wax, the remake from '05. The idea in and of itself is just so cool, so interesting, and it's executed to perfection, in my opinion. The whole ending with the house just melting and seeing the carcasses of these people underneath this wax casing was just so gruesome and nasty and beautiful. I loved it. A lot of people hated on Paris Hilton for being in this movie. I don't care for her in this movie at all either, but I love her death scene. Her death scene is fantastic. I really think the setting, again, like with P2, very lonely, very hopeless feeling, like there's nothing you're really going to be able to do. And the kills are just top notch. I mean, I really, really enjoy this movie. I think it's a blast. It's a ride, man. You watch it, you have fun. You're not going to be bored watching House of Wax. Very worthy, modern adaptation of the original. Super cool kills, great visuals, good acting. I think it's just a fun, memorable movie. And I want you guys to check it out if you haven't. And if you watched it and you didn't like it, you better get back on your horse and watch it, because this movie's fun. Another very underappreciated horror movie, in my opinion, is 2014's As Above, So Below. And this is a movie that I feel like just totally flew under the radar for so many people. I think that's because people were getting burnt out on found footage at that point. I can totally understand that, because it's a lot to handle for an hour and a half, 2 hours of a movie. But especially when you have every other movie seems to be a found footage movie. I mean, I get the burnout on it. However, I will say with this movie, this isn't like a lot of those found footage movies. This movie is smart. This movie, I mean, it incorporates themes of history and chemistry into its plot, while also traversing the catacombs of France. I just think it's so cool. And their world literally gets flipped upside down and they're basically in hell. I think it's a super smart movie that actually, if it came out a few years before it did, it would have done so much better. But the burnout on found footage, I think, is really what killed this movie. But I love this movie. It's just so fun. If you haven't seen it, check it out. And if you didn't like it, please give it another viewing. I think it's super creepy. I think it's well acted. I love As Above, So Below. The next movie that I think you guys should give a second chance to, no surprise to anybody, Child's Play, the remake. I've talked about this ad nauseum. I'm not really going to get into the weeds with it, but I just want to let you guys know that I think that this movie is a super enjoyable, original take on a classic. Yes, we can talk about how the doll's design is kind of crappy. Yeah, we can talk about how it's not the same because it's not Charles Lee Ray and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's the point though. I think this movie is super smart. I think that this movie is very well acted, aside from Andy's friends. Aubrey Plaza and Mark Hamill as the voice of Chucky is great. They tried their own thing. They didn't try to keep the witty, self-aware Chucky. You really feel like he loves Andy and he wants to do whatever Andy wants of him because he just wants to be his best friend. And it's kind of heartbreaking in that way. But I will tell you what, the kills in this movie are top notch. There is some great carnage candy in this movie. So check out Child's Play, the remake. Give it another chance. It's really not bad at all. The next one I want to talk about is Jennifer's Body. Yes. Now, Jennifer's Body was not super well received when it first came out by critics or fans alike. Over time, it seems like it's gaining a cult following. And you know what? Good. I am happy because Megan Fox is absolutely a beast in this movie. I love Jennifer's Body. The kills are insane. The way she uses her appearance to lure people in to then eat them is awesome. The visuals are great for the time. I think Amanda Seyfried acts super well in the movie too. Their friendship and their bond, even when Jennifer becomes what she does, it's like she still can't help but like love her and want to help her. But how it came to be too is also really sad when you find out what happened to her and why. I love the ending too. I love the kills. I love the acting. This was Megan Fox's peak. I'm super excited that she's returning to the horror genre. But yeah, Jennifer's Body is a super underappreciated movie that a lot of people watched once and they said never again. Watch that movie again. That movie is a blast. The next movie I want to talk about is one I just rewatched 2 nights ago, and that is The Crazies. Yes, The Crazies from 2010. This movie was again another movie that sort of flew under the radar. Not really. I think it did pretty well at the box office, but it came and went. You know, didn't seem to have a lasting impact. Not a lot of people really talked about it aside from the hardcore horror fans and zombie fans. This movie's awesome. The visuals, I've always loved the zombie movies where the zombies aren't just a rotting pile of flesh with no thought. I love when they're smarter. I love when they're faster. It's almost like it's a process. You know, they become infected. They're slowly dying, degenerating into what they become. It's a form of zombie, but I mean, it's different. If you've seen the movie, you know. I absolutely loved The Crazies, and I think that, first of all, Timothy Olyphant is fantastic. I love his performance in this movie. I like the emotional back and forth between him and his deputy and what ends up happening there. I think is really cool, because you hate the deputy for a while, and then you're like, good on you, man. Also really makes you hate the military in this movie. I mean, you know, just because of what they do. But I just think it's a super fun movie. I think it's super smart. And it's truly a shame we never got a continuation of it because I love The Crazies. So if you watched it and you didn't care for it or it flew under your radar, give it a watch. And then another movie, the last movie on this list that I think deserves a second viewing, and that is Wes Craven's New Nightmare. I understand why a lot of people are kind of turned off by New Nightmare because it's very different. It doesn't follow the linear storyline that you had with Heather Langenkamp's character, Nancy, from 1 and 3. So it's almost kind of like, well, it's a sequel, but it's not a sequel. Oh, I'm not about it. I think it's stupid. And I've heard both sides of it. I will tell you that New Nightmare is a super intelligent movie. I think it's very self-aware. I think it's very smart. I think it's super well acted. I think that keeping Freddy Krueger, you know, the demon, off of the screen until over an hour into the movie, I think was brilliant. And I just really loved the fresh take because nobody can deny after Freddy's dead, this franchise was in desperate need of a shot in the arm. And a shot in the arm is what New Nightmare provided. You can say it's not a sequel because technically it's not, but when you watch it, you watch it and go, yeah, okay, it's, you know, like in my mind, this is Heather Langenkamp and Robert Englund meeting again to fight, you know, like it doesn't take away from part 1 or part 3, but I really enjoyed New Nightmare when I rewatched the series last month, and I think it's a movie that you guys should really give another chance to if you didn't enjoy it. So that's 10 horror movies that I feel like deserve another chance. If you liked them upon first watch, awesome. If you didn't like them and you've been debating giving them another watch, go ahead and do it. I implore you to do it. And if you're someone like me, and it's not that you didn't want to give them another watch, you just didn't think about it, again, I implore you to do so because I think these 10 movies are sneaky good movies that don't get enough love. So thanks for tuning in to today's video, guys. I have a list of my own from some of my subs that I need to check out, and one of them being Book of Shadows. Yes, I plan to rewatch it. That's going to do it for today's video. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Share with your friends. And this is Nick from the Lost River Drive-In, pulling out.